As soon as Jackson shows up and says hi and hey, College Football Nation, we know it's time to start the show. It's time to start the show. We got the official word from Jackson. Appreciate y'all being here, the voice of college football. And spring practice starting all over the country this week at a number of locations. Pretty much most of the teams starting here in the first week of March. A lot of teams starting just in a few days by March 4th or 5th. So time to unveil the Voice of College Football Top 25 Spring Edition. And I got to say that mid-afternoon, I was planning on producing a video and releasing it. But I thought, you know what? It has taken me forever to do this video. Way too many graphics involved. Way too many graphics with 25 teams. And so I got about halfway done and thought, live stream, let's fire it up. Let's go. So we are open to your calls, but first and foremost, we are going to run through our spring top 25. I did not release a way too early top 25, and I think it's now too late to release a way too early top 25. So this is the spring top 25. Pretty simple process when it comes to, okay, how good were the teams last year? Do I believe that they met expectations, failed to meet expectations? Were they better or were they worse than what they showed us last year? Some teams overachieved, underachieved. So what did I think about that particular team last year? What did they, of course, lose to the NFL draft? Which, of course, it just hit me in the last 5 minutes that it's the first day of the NFL Combine in Indianapolis. I'll have to catch up on that. And if anyone wants to call concerning that, certainly it is open to that discussion as well. But, yeah, how good was the team last year? Did they overachieve, underachieve? What did they lose? What did they gain through the transfer portal and through the 2024 recruiting class? And so how does that translate? This is not schedule related. So if you want to make comments, have questions, throw those in the chat concerning the schedule and how the schedule plays into this. Absolutely, that's part of the conversation. But this is not part of the top 25. The schedule has nothing to do with it. These are the 25 best teams in the country right now. And again, schedule has nothing to do with it. So why don't we get to it? The Amazon links in the description section of all the videos. And I cannot emphasize enough that if you shop on Amazon, please use the link that we provide. You might as well, right? Same shopping experience. It's the one way that you can contribute financially to what we do here at the Voice of College Football without spending 1 red cent. Here we go. Our number 25 team has actually been a sub 500 team the last 2 years. Brian Harsin, the coach in 2022, and of course, Hugh Freeze took over last year. It's odd to say Brian Harsin now. It seems like that was 10 years ago. 6-7 last year, lost a bowl game to Maryland. They have to figure out how to throw the pigskin down the field. They need to discover the forward pass at Auburn. They were abysmal throwing the football last year. It's astonishing that they played teams like Alabama and Georgia as well as they did with no passing threat. None. Next to none, of course. Peyton Thorne, the Michigan State transfer quarterback who played most of last year, was the starting quarterback. 16 touchdowns, 10 picks off the top of my head. Should be the starting quarterback this year, although Walker White is their prized 5-star top 5 quarterback in the country, top 50 player in the country that could push for the job, but true freshman. They had the 10th rated recruiting class in all of college football, 14 4-stars for Hugh Freeze. And 10 years later, of course, we've got to figure that they were acquired legally and above board because just about everything's above board now. Cam Coleman is the prize prospect, at least on the offensive side. And Jamanta Waller at the edge position. You've got Jalen McLeod, their biggest playmaker on defense, coming back, 10.5 tackles for loss and 5.5 sacks. Rivaldo Fairweather at wide receiver, 38 catches, 6 touchdowns. Auburn at number 25. Stay in the SEC, number 24. And going forward, the top 34 teams in the country are going to come from the SEC and the Big Ten anyway, right? 1 through 34. So these are going to be all SEC and Big Ten teams. Texas A&M. So it's been a bit misreported, blown out of proportion of how many players left that famed number 1 recruiting class, the greatest of all time in 2022 for Texas A&M. We posted a video on that about 6 weeks ago. 21 of 30 are still with Texas A&M, albeit they did lose 4 of the top 5. Shamar Turner is the outstanding defensive lineman who has stayed at Texas A&M as one of the best players at his position in the SEC. So they have held on to a lot of that talent. They did lose a lot, but it's blown out of proportion that they just lost this entire recruiting class from 2022. And the reason I focus on that recruiting class is because Mike Elko was not around to sign those players, but he was around to recruit them. He was a big factor in the recruiting process. He's familiar with those players in many of the Texas A&M recruiting classes that formed this team because he was the defensive coordinator at A&M before he went to Duke and did a remarkable job there. I am optimistic about Texas A&M, not just in 2024, but going forward. Mike Elko, what he did at Duke, remarkable. We thought David Cutcliffe did a nice job at Duke for 5 or 6 years. No, what Elko did and how well they played against the best teams in the ACC and how well they were prepared every week. Nobody blew out Duke these 2 seasons. So Mike Elko now works with a top-end SEC athlete across the board, all positions. They have one of the better defensive players in the conference in Torian York. I mentioned Turner. They've got a new offensive coordinator in Colin Klein, of course, former Kansas State great and offensive coordinator at K-State. So he comes into the fold to work with Connor Weigman. And a big key to the season will be keeping Connor Weigman upright and healthy for the entire season. 69% completion percentage, former 5-star. So 8.5 is the win total for Texas A&M. I've got the Aggies at number 24 right now. Our number 23 team is a team that Jeff Brom took over and took to the ACC championship game last year. They lost to Florida State there. Jeff Brom, of course, took a transfer quarterback whom he was extremely familiar with from his Purdue days in Jack Plummer, led them to that conference championship game. They ripped off 10 wins in their first 11 games, but then they down at the end of the season, lost to Kentucky, lost that ACC championship game, lost to USC, but still 10-4, a rousing success for Jeff Brom in year 1. Now he works with another transfer quarterback in Tyler Shook, had his stop at Oregon, Texas Tech, now Louisville. Ja'Cory Brooks, who underachieved at Alabama, but did have some big catches during his 3 years. Saved the game against Auburn on the Plains in the Iron Bowl in 2022. He's an incoming transfer wide receiver. They've had 3. Tyler Barron was a disruptive pass rusher at Tennessee with 6 sacks. He's an addition as well. And Penny Boone, one of the top backs in the nation statistically out of Toledo, 1,400 yards, 15 touchdowns. That's an addition for Louisville as well. So they pick up the pass rusher from Tennessee, wide receiver from Bama, top rusher from Toledo, transfer quarterback Tyler Shuck. This is how these teams are built and constructed these days. We got the Cardinals at number 23. At number 22, death, taxes, Iowa football. We can count on Iowa football. Great defense, great special teams, deplorable offense. I don't even think there's a term for the offense. I don't think we've reached, without using profanity, I don't think we can describe the Iowa offense. So Tim Lester, you can be a hero. Tim Lester, you can be a hero. If the Iowa offense averages 25 points per game this year, they should send the money that they saved, or maybe they just assumed that they wouldn't score 25 points a game, so they didn't even have it in reserve to pay Brian Ferentz's bonus. They should send that to Tim Lester this year. Cade McNamara's health could be a big key to this season. Cade McNamara is not a great quarterback. He's not a dynamic quarterback. He's a game manager, but he knows what he's doing. And for him to stay healthy and manage and run that Iowa offense would be, based on what else they have, I think that's the key there. That is the conclusion. It's not so much what Cade McNamara is, it's what the rest of the quarterback room probably is not. Our buddy Corey Bratta is high on Marco Lyonez and wants to see him get a shot. So again, Tim Lester, after a year in the NFL, comes in from Western Michigan, where he was the head coach and led and produced a lot of top 30 to 35 offenses college football. Could you imagine Iowa fans, top 35 offense? It's almost laughable. How about a top 90 offense? So we've got Iowa at number 22. Caden Proctor, of course, the five-star who shunned the Hawkeyes out of high school, signed with Alabama, started for the Crimson Tide. Some of his missed blocks and missed assignments early in the season were highlighted, made fun of. Five-star offensive tackle, started at Alabama, started on arguably the best roster in college football. So that's a huge addition for Iowa to get Caden Proctor back. And he will most likely be starting at left tackle. We know about the defense. They lost Cooper DeJean and some other key pieces on that side of the football. I believe Joe Evans as well. Jay Higgins, he made 171 tackles. Iowa's secondary play, linebacker play in particular, sterling. We previewed the secondary on our Iowa show with Corey on Tuesday. Sebastian Castro, Quinn Schulte, exceptional secondary. Iowa, we have as the 22nd best team in the country. Again, we're not factoring in schedules. Not looking at schedules. I'm not making predictions here. These are not predictions. These are the 25 best teams in the country. Mario Cristobal and Miami. This is the most disappointing football program in the country over the last 20 years. Texas would be post Mac Brown and before last season, during that time frame. This is the program that's the most disappointing in the last 20 years. They've done nothing, zero, nothing, awful, zero, 58% winning percentage. They had one good year under Mark Richt. They went 10-3, finished in the top 15. Other than that, made it to one ACC championship game that year. Mario Cristobal's been there. He took over a top 15 roster And he's 12-13. And his game management, of course, we can talk seriously about his game management, or we can just laugh at the Georgia Tech game. Because, of course, that was a debacle and embarrassment. So now let's focus on 2024. Can they correct this 20-year drought? Vegas believes so. The win total is 9.5. And Miami's 9.5 win total, in terms of the odds, the payouts on both sides, is exactly the same, almost exactly the same as Florida State and Clemson. Vegas projects Miami to be just as good and to accomplish just as much as Florida State and Clemson this year. We do appreciate everyone here at the Voice of College Football. Thank you so much for stopping by. You can certainly contribute at Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App at MarkRogersTV. That's where you find me at Venmo. PayPal is just Mark Rogers, and you see my wonderful face, my ugly face, whatever you want to term it. You do see this face without the glasses at PayPal, Cash App as well, where I believe it is just $ Mark Rogers, might be Mark Rogers TV. Venmo, you're safe there, Mark Rogers TV, and those links are in the description section as well. So we appreciate your support. Thank you to Dylan Shirley, who reached out yesterday on Facebook, which I was glad that I caught his message because I never look at the Facebook page, but that will be an endeavor for a future year. The Facebook Voice of College Football page. It's about number 37 on the priority list right now. But Dylan reached out and said, hey, Mark, where can we contribute? We're not able to watch the live show because we watch in the morning or at another time of day, but we would like to contribute. And so I said, thank you very much for that. Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App, the most effective ways to contribute here at the Voice of College Football. Or if you're doing your Amazon shopping tonight, of course, use the link that we provide in the description section. Next up. Oh, more on Miami. Because I just talked about all the disappointments from previous seasons. Did not talk about why there should be optimism for this season. Starts with, of course, most likely the best quarterback portal pickup in Cam Ward. I know that he's got the highest ceiling. I don't know if he's the best quarterback. Xavier Restrepo, wide receiver, comes back. One of the best in the slot, 85 catches, 1,000 yards. Jacoby George is back, 55 catches, 8 touchdowns. Mark Fletcher at running back, prized, borderline 5-star out of high school, turned it on, took over that role late in the season for the Canes, ran for 100 yards plus against NC State in Louisville. Hurricane Bane, one of the great emerging stars after a tremendous freshman season, 12.5 sacks, 12.5 tackles for loss, 7.5 sacks. Francisco Mauinoa, 82 tackles at linebacker, All-America caliber linebacker. If Mario Cristobal doesn't win 8 games with this team, he officially can't coach against this schedule. That's the underlining point to that. Not just with this team, against this schedule. At number 20, we go to what was Jed Fish's team that he was building, the program he was building, all the good things that he had done in committing himself to Arizona football. And he's on record as saying that he was going to stay and continue to build that program, but he didn't. He's not the first. From 1-11 and what Kevin Sumlin left, Jed Fish did a fantastic job. 10-3, first top 15 finish going back to the late 1990s, I believe 1998. Won a bowl game against Oklahoma. Shoot, they came within. I know that they missed out on the Pac-12 championship game by one game Now, they lost to USC in triple overtime. Had they won that game, they did not play Oregon. Don't know what that tiebreaker would have been. But regardless, one game out of the Pac-12 championship game and lost to USC in triple overtime. So they were that close to doing really huge things. Okay, fast forward. Here we go. Brent Brennan in from San Jose State. What I've been impressed with here is that he's maintained the roster. He has lost some players. I believe the running back Jonah Coleman in particular, but he keeps the wide receiver Torra McMillan, 90 catches, and quarterback Noah Fafita, who was the Pac-12 newcomer of the year on offense. They've got a great linebacker in Jacob Manu, who racked up over 100 tackles. Brent Brennan, Arizona, number 20. And of course, they go to the Big 12. So this is going to be fascinating. I think this is even more interesting than seeing how Oregon and USC will compete in the Big 10 and the two newcomers to the SEC. That's going to be fascinating as well. But even more than that, because they have a legitimate chance to win a championship, Arizona and Utah to the Big 12. Number 19 is Oklahoma. Boomer. Brent Venables, took him a year to get revved up there at Oklahoma to upgrade the strength and conditioning, which was lacking based on all indications, based on reports, people that follow the team, the guys that we talk to on a regular basis, guys like John Williams at OU Fan Nation and Parker Thune. Those guys said, hey, the strength and conditioning is a huge priority of Brent Venables. He upgraded, loses Dylan Gabriel, but they turn it over to the former five-star Jackson Arnold. Gavin Sawchuk and Javante Barnes at running back. Studs. Sawchuk led the team in rushing last year. Drake Stoops, legit player, slot receiver, has gone from the Hunter Renfrow. He went from the Hunter Renfrow prospect status of low 3-star to Hunter Renfrow. No, the dude can play legitimately, is that good. 84 catches. Watch Peyton Bowen emerge on defense. He showed his flashes the Texas game in particular when people were watching. And former 5-star and great athlete. And then we got Danny Stutzman leading the linebacking core and him coming back and deciding to forego the NFL draft was huge. Danny Stutzman, 104 tackles, 16 TFLs. And just so that they can keep an eye on each other, we thought we'd put USC right next to Oklahoma. Just did notice that. Maybe one of the more surprising developments of the offseason is that USC, after losing Caleb Williams, most had thought that they were going after a transfer quarterback, and Will Howard was reported to be going to USC, but that did not happen. And I don't know if they ran out of options specifically, or it was a combination of running out of the options that they pursued, that they wanted. And Miller Moss then, of course, firing up for 450 yards and 6 touchdowns against Louisville in the Holiday Bowl. So they are pinning their hopes on Miller Moss. Their offense loses a ton of tremendous talent. However, Marshawn Lloyd at running back and a number of receivers, Taj Washington, whom we'll see at the NFL draft or at the NFL Combine, but they bring back a lot. They'll be fine on offense. The big question mark is, this is one of these units where, okay, the defense has been atrocious, just a joke. The defense has been a joke, but not so much personnel upgrades, but D'Anton Lynn, who did wonders with the UCLA defense as the number 1 rated defense in the Pac-12. UCLA was legit on defense. D'Anton Lynn leaves UCLA, goes to USC, takes it over, brings in Eric Henderson. It's one of the top defensive line coaches in the NFL. So USC, who knows, maybe they'll be a defensive-led team this year. Maybe they flipped it. USC at number 18. Top 17, we go to a team that advanced to the Big 12 championship game last year. Of course, it's going to be more difficult to clear that assignment. Well, I say that, but no. Let me back up. It's not. It's not. Never mind. Oklahoma State. Ollie Gordon's back. Top rusher in college football last year. Alan Bowman. This is his 7th year. I'm glad that he has found a location, a big-time location, where he can be the starting quarterback. He can throw 15 touchdowns and 14 picks, still be the starting quarterback for a team that went to the Big 12 championship game. Mike Gundy and company got off to a horrendous start last year. Of course, they lost by 4 scores to South Alabama in the first month of the season, dropped a couple games, but he had a plan. He stuck with it and figured out his personnel moves that needed to be made in the first month. And Oklahoma State coming back with Gordon, with Bowman. The defense, though. Defensive coordinator Brian Nierdo. This is his 2nd season, and that Cowboys defense was 125th in the country in total defense, number 123 in yards per play against. So Nierdo will have to improve the Cowboys on that side of the football. Mike Gundy and crew at number 17. That's where we've got the Pokes. K-State's at number 16. We stay in the Big 12. Chris Kleiman. It must be that Bill Snyder somehow magically is able to, he dropped his bag of fairy dust in Manhattan, because they are the same program under Chris Kleiman. And I'm going to say that they have pretty much maxed out. They went and won a Big 12 championship 2 years ago. They went 9-4 this last year, finished in the top 15 to 18 in the country. It's pretty remarkable. Now they got to find a quarterback. Will Howard left for Ohio State. Avery Johnson is most likely, not that Avery Johnson. Avery Johnson, the taller guy, Avery Johnson, most likely will take over at quarterback. Threw a couple touchdowns against NC State in the bowl win. Trayshawn Ward is headed to Boston College. I don't know why he left necessarily. They lost 15 players through the transfer portal and guys that contributed. So that's a bit concerning. They were only 59th in defense. They're usually better than that. 76th in yards per play against, and they lose some of their better players on that side of the football. Still, Kansas State, we've got them at number 16. Again, the quarterback situation is going to have to be remedied, of course. Here we go. Number 15 in all of college football is a newcomer to the Big 12. The Big 12's got a run going here. 17, 16, 15. Utah. The Utes. Welcome back, Cam Rising. Welcome back to college football. Good to see you. Welcome back, Brant Keith, to college football. He missed all of last season. One of the best tight ends, college football. Shoot. Kyle Whittingham didn't need to do any work in the transfer portal, and he gained a top-flight quarterback and a top-5 tight end, just like that. Keith has caught 148 passes in his career. Jaquindon Jackson, transfer portal loss at running back to Arizona, most likely going to be replaced by the combination of Micah Bernard and Jalen Glover. Utah in the Big 12, how will they fare? How will they fare? I think we could have a great debate between Utah, Kansas State, Oklahoma State. Those three in particular. Let's hold it off on Arizona and Brent Brennan. Those three in particular, not just talking about this season, talking about long-term success in the Big 12. The most balanced, I don't want to say the deepest. It's not necessarily the deepest conference in the country. Let's not get that messed up. Just because it's marginal with competitive games from top to bottom. So who's the best team in the Big 12 right now? Who is it? Let's take a poll. Utah, Arizona, who's the best team in the Big 12? Who's the worst team in the Big 12? Well, best team in the Big 12, worst team in the Big 12. Who wins that game? Probably the best team in the Big 12, but it would not be a shock. It's not like Vanderbilt playing Georgia. It's not Indiana playing Ohio State. That's not what it is. So it's a fun conference. Unfortunately, it's going to get ignored by a lot of people. Maybe we should start a Big 12 channel to give the Big 12 some props. What do you think? Should we start a Big 12 channel? There needs to be some love for the Big 12. There needs to be some love for the Big 12. Maybe we should start a Big 12 channel. Get the word out there that there still is a Big 12 playing college football, and we need to cover some teams besides the likes of the SEC and the Big 10. Oh, yeah, we do have a Big 12 channel. There it is, the Big 12 channel. Please subscribe. Check it out. Next up on our list of our top 25 that doesn't necessarily make sense, because what is there to make sense of? You could throw any 25 out there now. You don't have to defend it in any way. Jackson, speaking the truth here. Let's get the Big 12 football at the Voice of College Football to 1,000 subs. 1,000 subs, folks. Let's get us there. Thank you for that. And the SEC. So next up, number 14, Penn State. Penn State loves this 12-team college football playoff. Now watch them never make it now. Watch them become the 8-4, 7-5 team. I'm just kidding. But it would be kind of funny, just because they have been the team. I posted this on X the other day. I went through all the teams in the Big 10, and I posted how many times they would have reached a 14-team playoff in the last 10 years. During the 10-year 4-team playoff, how many times would a team have reached a 14-team playoff? Ohio State, 10 out of 10. Of course. Penn State was next, 6 times. Michigan was 5. And then I believe Wisconsin, 3. And I thought somebody else had 3. Wisconsin, 3. Not Iowa. Maybe that was it. Michigan State. 14-team playoff in the Big 10 over the last 10 years. Ohio State would have made it 10 times. Penn State, the beneficiary more often than anybody in the country of a expanded playoff field. But now they've got to get it done. Drew Aller coming back at quarterback. 25 touchdowns, 2 picks. That sounds great. And he was okay. He was a game manager. He did the right things, made the right throws in all the games except for the 2 that everyone watched. He was pretty bad in those 2 games. He was facing 2 of the best defenses in the country, but Drew Aller was pretty awful against Ohio State and Penn State and Michigan. So he's got to get better. The 2 running backs, they've had better days. Their freshman campaign together was much better. And if that's going to work in tandem, they're going to be better if Aller's better, taking pressure off them. And if they can deliver, then that should open things up for Drew Aller. They need to find playmakers at wide receiver. And again, Nick Singleton, Katron Allen at running back, exceptional duo. They lose their defensive coordinator, Manny Diaz. Tom Allen takes over. Is he going to be as aggressive? Is he going to be as effective? Penn State, more than anything last year, wasted a collection of defenders that were freaks, just freaks all over the place. Athletic, great defense. And most of them leave. They do bring back Abdul Carter and Dennis Denai Sutton. He's back. They bring in a couple transfer cornerbacks from big schools, A.J. Harris and Jalen Kimber. They will compete for jobs. Penn State at number 14. All right, number 13. Nico Iamalavea. Most people got to see him against Iowa in the bowl game. He looked impressive. Tennessee has lost 12 in the transfer portal, and the NFL draft is not going to be kind to Tennessee either. But they had a top 20 defense last year in yards per play against. Back to the offense. Lance Hurd, incoming transfer from LSU, is key along the offensive line at tackle. Dylan Sampson, 600 yards, 7 touchdowns. Squirrel White, Brew McCoy at wide receiver. Tennessee at 13. Number 12. I'm going to say this a little bit later about another coach in that area of the country. I'll say this about Eli Drinkwitz. Keep doing it. You've shown us 1 year, 1 season. You've pulled through 1 time. And in college football, that's typically good enough to grant you this amazing 800% raise if you pull through 1 time. I don't get it. I don't agree with it, but that's what it is. Eli Drinkwitz was under 500 before last year. He pulls off 11-2, Cotton Bowl win, played Georgia close, beat Tennessee's brains out. Good season. Beat Kansas State. Brady Cook's back at quarterback. 21 touchdowns, 6 picks. Luther Burden, one of the most talented wide receivers in the country. He's back. He produced last year. 86 catches, 1,200 yards, 9 touchdowns. Theo Weeson, Mookie Cooper. They're back. All those guys caught over 170 passes combined. They got to replace Cody Schrader at running back, one of the best backs in the country. Really good defensive performance out of Mizzou last year, but they lose their DC. Mizzou at number 12. The more I talk about them, the more I'm thinking I've got them ranked too high. But we can change that. This is just the spring top 25. Florida State's at number 11. Mike Norvell, he just received a contract extension as well and a raise to $10 million. So he is now the, I believe, 4th or 5th highest paid coach in college football. Do you agree? 13-1. So they lost by 60 points. 13-1. Jordan Travis, he and a lot of other guys from this Florida State team are in Indianapolis this week. Jared Verse and others. Of course, the 2 wide receivers, Johnny Wilson, Keon Coleman, Trey Benson at running back. He's gone. Really shifty, fast, quick twitch guy at running back gone. They're going to rely on Keziah Holmes and the Alabama transfer Roydell Williams at running back. This is no longer Jared Verse's defense, as it was Jermaine Johnson's defense before him. Now it's Patrick Payton's defense. Florida State, number 11. Hey, they're so closely aligned and attached and connected. We might as well keep them back-to-back, just like USC and Oklahoma. Clemson at number 10. And Florida State had this outstanding season, college football playoff would be. won the ACC, wasn't close. They were the runaway ACC champion, and all of that. However, consider that Clemson outplayed them in Death Valley. And it got away from Clemson. Give Florida State the credit, but Dabo Swinney couldn't come up with a field goal kicker for that week. That was part of the problem. And Clemson lost that game, and there went the season. Tigers missed the playoffs for a third consecutive year. Third consecutive down year for Clemson. Post Trevor Lawrence, 9-4, did win the final 5. So the thing I've got to say about Dabo Swinney's teams the last 3 years, they have fallen out of contention early. Well, the middle year, they did win the ACC despite losing 3 total games. They did win the ACC, but the other 2 years, they were out of the race early and they poured it on. They showed that they love their coach, love the program, are gamers. So I like that. Clemson, we have yet to introduce Clemson to the transfer portal. They still don't know that this exists. But they're recruiting well. They've got to replace their center, Will Putnam, their heart and soul. Phil Maffa's back at running back. They do lose Will Shipley. Love both of these guys. Outstanding running backs. But Shipley moves on to the NFL draft, but Phil Maffa coming back. He toted it 36 times against Notre Dame for almost 200 yards. Had a great stretch drive, 15 touchdowns for Phil Maffa. Loses the football a little too often, though. The wide receiver core needs to get better. Tyler Brown and company there. Big losses along the defensive front. This was another near vintage, not 2017-18, but near vintage Clemson front with Tyler Davis and that crew. So they got to replace those guys, but they got Barrett Carter back at linebacker. He's a stud. Cade Klubnik, it's on you, buddy. Second year in Garrett Riley's offense. He's got to improve, got to be better. And Clemson, Miami, Florida State, according to Vegas, all have that same win total and odds in the ACC. At number 9 in the country, your defending national champions. This is the first time since 1998 that a national champion has lost its head coach. That team did extremely well. That was the Nebraska team under Frank Solich. They finished in the top 5. So I'm gauging Michigan to be the 9th best team in college football. I would be surprised if they were a top 5 team. I'd be surprised if they were not a top 15 team. So I think we're right there. Lose the head coach. Lose the DC. Lose coaches. Quarterback. Running backs. Defensive players. We know the suspects. But we also know that Will Johnson's back at corner. Mason Graham. Colston Loveland's one of the best tight ends in college football. Donovan Edwards, play a full season. Show us that you can do it for a full season. What happened to Donovan Edwards suddenly in the playoff? So Michigan's at number 9, but the big question is, of course, quarterback. Alex or G? I've never seen the guy throw the ball. I don't know. Can he throw the ball? I'm sure Michigan fans are commenting in the comment section right now, and I probably have them ranked too low. Mike says defense is still back. Well, not the linebackers aren't back. But yeah, you're going to have a great defense. I shouldn't throw that term around. I hate when people throw that term around. I don't know if you're going to have a great defense. You did last year. You're certainly going to have a good defense. And we got the wink factor. Okay. I think that's a good factor. Ferris says if Michigan is number 9, that's a good season. Likely make the playoffs with that positioning. I would be happy with that. And again, this is not a ranking with the schedule in mind. So this is not a prediction ranking. This is they are the 9th best team in the country ranking. This is not I looked at the schedule and I think they're going to finish number 9 in the country. But I get your point there, Ferris. I'm right there with you. Yes, they will be in the playoff with this ranking. Mike, if you could, I'm glad you're letting me know this ahead of time, because when we do all of our analysis, instant analysis, and all of our shows and analysis and recaps and everything we do, I'm going to have to let everyone know I'm not watching Michigan football this year. No, thank you. Connecting that word and 20 to 22-year-old men. Okay. Yes. All right. Let's keep moving. And who's better than Michigan? I guess LSU is by that much. They lose their quarterback. He was pretty good. Their wide receivers, they were pretty good. Garrett Nussmeier will be the starting quarterback, we would think. He performed extremely well against the Wisconsin Badgers in the bowl game. And he's been waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. He can fire it. He can spin it, boys. He's good. Logan Diggs gone. He went to Ole Miss. Yeah. Xavier Thomas, the incoming running back from Mississippi State. Harold Perkins. Got to utilize him correctly. That's key. He was one of the best players in college football 2 years ago. I thought that he should have been in the running for the Heisman Trophy 2 years ago. And they had him covering guys downfield last year. No. Get the quarterback. So learn how to use Harold Perkins. It should not be difficult. LSU with, you would have to say that LSU has in total fielded one of the top, roughly one of the top 5 defenses in college football over the last 20 to 25 years. Certainly from a talent perspective. And they were number 108 in college football last year on defense. That's unthinkable. Blake Baker fixed Missouri's defense. He comes in from Mizzou to fix the LSU defense. I've got the Bayou Bengals at number 8. Kalen DeBoer. Are you going to be a legend? Kalen DeBoer's won everywhere he's been. He's already a legend of sorts. At Sioux Falls. And North Dakota State, of course. Is that where he was? I shouldn't even cite these FCS teams because I don't know. All right. This is mighty intriguing. If I could see the record of any school in college football over the next 5 years, aside from one, I would say give me Alabama. I want to know how good Alabama is going to be. Are they going to slide into the rest of these SEC top flight program range, which is really good, but are they going to be another LSU, Florida when they're good, Auburn when they're good? Are they going to be that? Are they going to be what they were post Bear Bryant, pre Nick Saban? So 1982 to 2007, that's 25 years. I was going to, it seems like it should be longer than that, but that means Saban's been around a long time. 25 years between 1982 and 07. Wow. That's not connecting up here. They won a national championship during that time. Gene Stallings, 1992. But they were basically, put it all together, 8-4. They were 8-4 for 25 years. Or did Nick Saban establish something that's going to be difficult to break? Is it going to continue to roll? Well, maybe it would have had a better chance of staying intact under the old rules, under the previous pre-NIL and what we just learned here in the last week, the pre-inducement factor NIL, where pretty much everything goes. Alabama at number 7. Now, for this particular year, of course, Jalen Milroe comes back at quarterback. His improvement was pretty impressive last season. I don't know that he's going to get that much better. They've got Nick Sheridan coming in as the offensive coordinator. He was the quarterback coach for Michael Penix. They wanted, Grubb. What's his name? The Washington offensive coordinator who went off to the NFL. This is the beginning of the Justice Haynes era, and maybe if Alabama would have stuck with him on the ground, they would have won the Rose Bowl, maybe. Dallas Turner's off to the NFL. Caleb Downs left for Ohio State. Big loss. Still loaded with talent. The talent question is not going to come into play until Kalen DeBoer starts to bring in recruiting classes, and we'll see if he can match what they were doing before. But for right now, great roster. Alabama is a force that's going to have to be reckoned with. Still. Bama at number 7. Right, folks, we appreciate you being here, the voice of college football. Amazon links in the description section of all the videos. You can support us here at the Voice of College Football without spending a penny. How do you do that? Please use the Amazon link that we provide. We've got a Big 12 channel. Check it out. Links in the description section. We've got an SEC channel. Check it out. Link is in the description section. Just this week, had conversations setting up for spring football at Auburn and Alabama. And also over on the Clemson channel, which starting in 1 minute, we've got our all-in show on the Clemson Tigers channel. And we are in the midst of breaking down all the positions at Clemson. And that also reminds me that I've got to check in on something on the Clemson channel right now. I so much want a few things to get done here in the next few days. There's a few things in my life, in my situation, that we need to get past. When we get those done, when we get those accomplished, then look out. Look out. Just a lot of amazing things that we've got planned. New people we're bringing on board. Oh, just hang in there. Hang tight. And subscribe to the Big 12 channel and the SEC channel. Let's keep it rolling. So this is the top 25. Sure, it makes sense. Sure, it does. It's the top 25 that actually makes sense. Spring edition. And I see it by looking in the folder here with the various banners in our Big 10 folder that they must have been doing a coaches rankings. Okay. I see one egregious error, but not too bad. All right, let's get back to it. We've got those running Rebels. No, that's UNLV. That's Jerry Tarkanian. This is Lane Kiffin. It's the Lane train. It's Ole Miss. Is Ole Miss ready to emerge? Nice season last year, 11-2. Won the Peach Bowl over Penn State. Jackson Dart back at quarterback. Lost Quinshon Judkins, but the transfer portal extremely kind otherwise to Ole Miss. Walter Nolan, one of the best players at his position. Juju Wells, Logan Diggs, we talked about him with LSU. Trey Amos, Amarian Walker, all picked up by Ole Miss. Rebels at number 6. Notre Dame could field one of the best defenses in college football this year. They, of course, have Xavier Watts, who was all over the place during the season, all over the field. And then once the season was over, he was all over the place picking up trophies. So Xavier Watts and Notre Dame at number 5 with, of course, a new quarterback in Riley Leonard. Now, I don't know if the prized recruit Steve Angeli has a legitimate shot to unseat Riley Leonard. I think the world of Riley Leonard. I think he's an excellent player, a gamer. I don't know that he's a great quarterback. He's really good. I'll give him that. He's really, really good. The wide receiver room, what's new, needs to step up. This team, this program, this coach needs a breakthrough win. They beat USC last year. That's not it. 7-5 USC. The year before, they beat Clemson. They just killed Clemson. But, of course, that was in the midst of a disappointing season. Their season was already lost. This team needs to break through. We've got Notre Dame at number 5. Thinking highly of the Irish, are we? Now we go to our final 4. And I am just now noticing that the top, aside from Notre Dame, the top 9 teams in the country come from a particular conference. Not surprising. Oregon's number 4. So Dan Lanning's doing a great job, but still on the job training as a game manager. He's had a phenomenal 2 seasons at Oregon, other than some questionable and not questionable, just flat out bad mistakes on the sideline. Will they miss Bo Nix? Dylan Gabriel posted similar numbers at Oklahoma and at UCF. They lost 14 through the transfer portal. Most of those guys, marginal players, but they were depth pieces, guys that played. Evan Stewart, incoming wide receiver from Texas A&M, big addition. And big addition in Jabbar Muhammad through the transfer portal, one of the best cornerbacks around. Oregon's number 4. What's being talked about here in the chat? Mike says Ole Miss could be a preseason top 5. They made good additions. Preseason champions. 0 Big 12 teams in the top 14. Yes, you're right. And let me remind anyone who would argue that. So, for example, there's a difference, and there's going to be an even bigger difference going forward between actually being, let's say, the 8th best team in the country and being ranked the 8th team in the country. I will be surprised if there aren't Big 12 teams ranked in the top 14. Well, will I be surprised? Maybe I won't be surprised. I will be mildly surprised if there aren't Big 12 teams ranked in the top 14 in the country, because they will have records most likely. Somebody's going to jump up to the front of the line and be 11-2, and then a 10-3. Their Big 12 championship game will probably have a 9-3 against the 10-2, something like that, because this conference is going to win back and forth against each other. They will cannibalize themselves to a certain extent, but not completely. Like they're not all going to be 6-6. So they could have somebody ranked in the top 14, but are they truly a top 14 team in the country? I don't believe so. Wet blanket, our Oklahoma State guy, SEC and the Big Ten should break off. Well, I would not think that he would want that. Wet blanket, don't you want your conference to play for a national championship? We've got Timothy who says, I guess we'll just have to wait and see what happens at the end of the year with the Big 12, won't we? Well, we're going to have to wait and see what happens with everyone at the end of the year. I believe that the SEC is still most likely the best conference. Not by much, but I posted a video about this. And if you want to take a deep dive with me, I didn't just throw crap at the wall. It's not how we do it here. Actually reviewed a lot in matching up the SEC and the Big Ten. Still gave the SEC a lead in comparison with the two conferences. The Big 12 is far behind. That's just until proven otherwise. That's my estimation. And I would like to be a contrarian and go against what everyone else is saying. But I don't see it. Mike, I would go to the nth degree to say, unless something changes drastically, there is not going to be a Big 12 team win a national championship ever. I don't know who that would be. And I don't know how they're going to win 3 or 4 consecutive games. The last Big 12 team that's currently in the conference to win a national championship is BYU. A tainted national championship in 1984. The last one to legitimately win a national championship what do we have to go back to? The 1930s? The 1940s? Mike was being polite. Thank you, Mike. We enjoy polite people. All right. Oh, yeah. We forgot about Colorado. They split a national championship in 1990. Yes. That was a that was a questionable one as well. 1990 Colorado. Thank you, preseason champions. I forgot about Colorado and Georgia Tech. Colorado went 10-1-1 that year. 10-1-1, and then they had they could have lost 3 games. They, of course, had the 5th down, and they also were given a call against Notre Dame that would have Rocket Ismail took that kickoff to the house or the punt return. Punt to the house with about 90 seconds left in the game. Something like that. So had that stood, Colorado won 10-9. Colorado would have won. They would have led what? I don't know if they would have gone for 2. They should have gone for 2. Let's say they get it. They're up 17-10. Then, no, they won 10-9. They would have been up 16-9. They would have kicked. They would have been up 16-9. And oh man, I'm mixing this up. Colorado would have gotten the ball. They would have been down by a touchdown. They won 10-9. Yes, they would have been down either 16 or 17-9, and they would have had about 45 seconds to score. Thank you. Finally got it out. Finally worked out that game situation. That's what I was thinking. Preseason champions, TCU in 1938 and 35. Yeah, that's where I was headed because I was forgetting about the teams that just entered the conference. Well, I really didn't forget about them. Oklahoma State, yes, 1945. Yep, I remember that one. Yes, I was just a child. All right, back to it. And we are in the top 3 in the country. And of course, I was rummaging around some numbers in my head today, and I thought Jim Tressel, Urban Meyer, Ryan Day, if you just talk about full-time permanent coaches, not the year with Luke Fickell, this program in the regular season over the last 20 years, 18 years, I think it is. I think I went back to 05 because they had an off season in 04. They went to 8-4. They have averaged less than 1 loss per season. So they were loaded last year. They did not have the quarterback to make it happen. They had some issues along the offensive line. Otherwise, they were as good as anybody in college football. Of course, they took the defending national champions within 35 yards. They lost that game, and Michigan proved to be the best team in the country, or earned the championship. Maybe Georgia was, who knows? But Michigan won the national championship. But considering what Ohio State did not have at the quarterback position, now I don't know if they're going to get that out of Will Howard. I don't think he's a great quarterback. And you can't play all your quarterbacks. This program has the best quarterback room in the country, but they're full of a bunch of freshmen and Will Howard. I'm overstating that to a certain extent. But Quinshon Judkins, of course, at running back with Travion Henderson. That's scary. Offensive line, that is going to be the work that they're going to have to do. And they're going to have to see what they have in spring practice and then possibly hit the transfer portal again. They picked up Seth McLaughlin from Alabama. That will help up front. And, of course, Caleb Downs. That is the best, most elite pickup of the offseason. The defense should be remarkable. Ohio State's loaded. But I'm going to rank these two teams ahead of Ohio State because of the quarterback position, mainly. And that's number 2, Texas. And with Texas, I made this statement about Mike Norvell. Was it Mike Norvell? No. I made this statement about somebody else got a raise after one good year. No, Missouri. Yes, Eli Drinkwitz. All the accolades come down after one year. Sark. Is he that good? He's had one. He finally, the guy coached for 5 or 6 years, 4, 5, 6 years at USC in Washington. This is his 3rd year at Texas. He finally wins a conference championship. Great. Okay, Texas now loaded. I believe the secondary is going to be better. I've looked at that personnel on that side of the ball in particular. They picked up the edge rusher, one of the most prized players in the transfer portal, Trey Moore from UTSA. Quinn Ewers back at quarterback, of course. Jonte Cook and Ryan Wingo, a couple of former 5-stars. Much expected of them. Texas in the SEC. How interesting. In one of the great games of the year, you got to think. Texas hosting Georgia. So I would like to say something original here about Georgia, but I won't. Nice addition with Trevor Etienne coming in from Florida, one of the best running backs in the SEC. Carson Beck's back at quarterback. Would have loved to have seen this team play Michigan last year to truly decide best team. That would have been a heck of a ball game. Best coach, best program, been the best team most of the last 5 years. Georgia's number 1. That's my top 25. Who else did I consider? I would say Wisconsin. I would say I don't recall. I don't know where my list is in terms of who else. Wisconsin comes to mind, but there were another, 6 or 8 teams that I considered. I do not think that a group of 5 team is one of the 25 best teams in college football. All right. Here we go. We've got Adam here. Mark, how could you pick Georgia over Ohio State? Deeper roster, more proven coach, not by a lot, and returning quarterback. There you go. Jim wants the 21 to 25 rewind. The rewind, you got the rewind. You got the rewind in your possession. Mike says Georgia is the clear number 1. Well, I don't necessarily agree with that, but that's fine. I've got them number 1, so they're my clear number 1 right now. Stephen is enjoying the Notre Dame barking. I also see that ESPN released an article later today. Let's see if this tells us anything of note. Optimism about a 14-team playoff. The future of the college football playoff contract after the 25 season remains uncertain, with Executive Director Bill Hancock saying last week there's a need for the deal to be done in the next month. Since its inception in 2014, when it created a 4-team model for a sport with 5 major conferences, the CFP has been unwieldy and awkward. Okay, what is giving us indication of optimism? Okay, one source says there's a lot of pressure to get it done or stop talking about it. The goal is for all the commissioners to reconvene next week via video conferencing to further discuss things. The television side of the deal has already been agreed to in principle. Starting in 2026, ESPN is poised to spend an average of nearly $1.3 billion on the playoff for 6 seasons. And so you guys, many of you have probably seen this, and we've talked about this in recent days. I've posted all sorts of videos about expanded playoff and what I think of it and what I think that's what it's telling us. And it's telling us exactly this. So even before this was reported today, I kind of went in this direction. I thought what Tony Petitti said in the last week was pretty obvious as to where his mindset was about pushing this playoff even further. The 14-team CFP model that's earned the most discussion would award 3 automatic qualifier spots for the Big Ten and the SEC, 2 for the Big 12 and ACC, and 1 for the group of 5. That would leave 3 at-large spots in that 14-team model, which could be reduced to 2 if Notre Dame is ranked in the top 14 on Selection Day. If this gets decided, I want to hear the explanation that why the Big Ten and the SEC deserve, that's the only word I can come up with because it's not earned, why they deserve one more automatic spot than the ACC and the Big 12. Why? No football's been played. No football has been played. So why would the Big Ten and the SEC, other than what we already know, we know what the answer is because they are pushing the sport in their direction. They hold the cards. They have the money. They have the resources. They have the big brands. They can force this to happen to say, play by our rules, give us more playoff spots, or we're out of here. And with us goes all the TV ratings. But to demand, I don't think that's right. And it's not even an arguable point. It's not right. That's just, it's a bully move. And I don't like it. Don't like it. Think it's low class of the Big Ten and the SEC. And it can't be justified. I can't wait to hear what's going to be stated by the Big Ten and the SEC, or it's going to have to be stated by the CFP committee, the management committee, because they make the decisions. So they will have made the decision. They're basically going to have to say, they're not going to say this, but they're going to have to say either these two conferences are better, they play better football, but that has no justification because we've not played any football in 2024. Or they're going to have to say something else that they won't say, that these two conferences rule the sport. They get the best TV ratings. They're the best brands. So they're going to get extra playoff spots without even playing games. This is really sickening. This is disgusting, actually. This is the more it sinks in, the more I am disgusted by this proposal. It's wrong. It's wrong. It's just, there's nothing to justify this 14 team model that they're proposing with the 3 automatic spots to the SEC and the 3 to the Big Ten. Nothing. It can't be defended in any way. It's a joke. It's horrendous. If you are the better conference, then just play the games and let that be determined. Let that be obvious to everyone. Just play the games. There it is. We're the best. We've got the best teams. So I made the statement the other day. Let me pull my thoughts together for a second because I'm remembering one point, but not the other. Okay, got it. This is what I explained the other day. This is what became obvious to me when it came out that there was a 14 team field being discussed. Well, let me backtrack 1 or 2 days. Tony Petitti was interviewed by ESPN, and he made 2 revealing statements. He said, number one, our goal in the Big Ten is to get as many teams into the playoff as possible. Now, that's the goal of every conference, but for him to state it made it known that we are going to trick the system. We are going to make moves to make this happen. We are going to change the structure of the playoff to make this happen. Then he also said, we want to play the most meaningful games in November in the Big Ten. We want to increase the number of meaningful games played in the Big Ten. Well, what does that also tell you? That tells you that there are going to be better teams and better games, better matchups in the Big Ten. They're going to have their better brands play each other more often, especially in November. Well, what happens when that happens? The teams may be just as good, of course, but the records are going to be suppressed. If your best teams are playing your best teams, then you're not going to have as pretty of records. And therefore, you run the risk of not having as many teams invited to the playoffs. Or I need to really discipline myself to go back to Mark circa 2015, 2014, when this was announced, and call it what it is, an invitational. It's not a playoff. It's an invitational. A playoff is an objective system to determine a champion. That's an objective system. This is an invitational. You have to be invited. So I'm going to do my best, because way back when, at the beginning of all this, I called it an invitational on a regular basis. But The system has wore me down. So it's an invitational. And the best records are being selected. Aside from the Florida State situation, the best records have always been selected. Those are the teams that get selected, the teams with the best records. Regardless of what we think about conspiracies and brands, the best records get selected every year. The best Power 5 records get selected. Up until Florida State, they were the first exception and the only one of the 10-year college football playoff 4-team era. So if you're playing your best teams against each other, you're going to suppress your records and you're going to harm the chances of teams making the playoffs. So when Tony Petitti said that, I thought, what's the next item that's going to come out? What is the next news item? What are we going to see? Well, what that was, 14-team playoff. Okay, that not only affords 2 more teams a playoff spot, of course. Even more important than that is that moves the configuration of the brackets from 4 byes to 2. So from all 4 conference champions receiving a bye to only 2 with the 14-team field, those 2 byes are going to go almost 100% of the time to the Big Ten and the SEC. So that's what they're gunning for. And number 2 is what we're seeing now, as reported today, automatic playoff spots, automatic qualifiers. So then it doesn't matter how much you've suppressed the records by playing the best teams against the best teams in your conference. You're still going to get at least 3 spots, and it's going to be more than 3 spots. We've run the numbers through the years, and the Big Ten will get 3 minimum, as many as 5. And then with 14 teams, who knows? If you've got a situation, let's say it's a down year for Notre Dame. They just went 8-4, they're out. You've got the 3 automatic qualifiers out of the SEC, 3 for the Big Ten, 2 for the ACC, 2 for the Big 12, 1 for the group of 5. And then you've got 3 at-large spots. 2 could go to the SEC and 1 to the Big Ten. They could turn out to have 9 of the 14 teams. Adams says the more competition, the more that teams will separate themselves in a meaningful way, and the best 4 teams will become clearer. Okay, sure. Yeah, the more teams compete, then the more data points for the best to separate themselves. I can agree with that. But it's not necessarily going to matter unless you're talking about the 4 best teams at the back end of the field. The 4 at the back end of the field are the last 3 spots. If you're talking about those 4, because before we would be talking about the first 4, the 4 with the byes, but there won't be 4 with byes. You're talking about, I guess, the final 3 at-large spots. Oh, Michael. 8-4 Notre Dame, hilarious. Fake news hypothetical record that never happens. Eight and 4. Now, if you're talking about Ohio State, Michael, if you were an Ohio State fan and stated 8-4 never happens, then that would be the truth. Does anybody out there Anybody out there? I posted the link at the top of the preseason champions. I can go after this one. This is a layup. It's right there for me. Anybody could go after this one. Does anyone see what the problem with this statement is? It's so incredibly ridiculous that Michael slept through the 2022 college football season. He just slept through the entire thing. Okay. Oh, Adam. You're talking my game. I've been talking about this for years. It's all over the place. I've got so many videos about scheduling. Absolutely. Exactly. They went 8-4 2 years ago. Yes. That's what we're talking about here. Where are we? Adam. So, yes, the solution is to revise the scheduling, not the playoff system. Thank you. The scheduling needs to be revised. I've got so many videos about that. I should just keep redoing them. That's what these successful YouTube channels do. Like if you go to some like political one or stock, I'm not going to say the guy's name, a stock channel that I know of, they just repeat the same videos. They just cut them differently and change them a little bit. And they say like 98% of the same thing, but then they change a little bit. That's what I need to do with scheduling. It's what I should do with a bunch of these realignment videos. Just send the same ones out and just change them a little bit. But yes, I should just dig those up. And yes, I've got a scheduling system that would work. And no one would ever have any control over their schedule again. Nobody would have any control over their schedule. All right. It looks as though some folks want to call. And so we will certainly accommodate that. And so we've got 20 minutes or so. Let's do it. So if you would like to call, please call. Let me know what you got. Nick says, Mark, let's be honest. Now, Nick, you are joking, right? You are joking. Michigan not being in your top 3 is because you're a Buckeye. Come on, man. Please don't use the phrase. You're reminding me of my former employer, and you're also reminding me of a completely incompetent person that we all know. So please don't do that. That can't be an honest comment. You've got to be trolling me with that comment. You got to be baiting me. It's got to be that. Come on. Come on, Nick. If you're not, please call. Because actually, anybody who would ever question my rankings, first of all, they're rankings in the preseason. So they're not based on anything. They're based on 0 results, right? Can we all agree on that? So you almost can't argue with anybody's rankings. I could rank Rutgers number 1. You can't really argue with it. There are no results. I guarantee, and you can go do the work if you'd like to, because I'm certainly not, but I guarantee that I have consistently ranked Ohio State lower than the national polls. So that's a ridiculous comment. That's just a dumb comment to make. All right, let's take some calls. Let's rip them off here. We got Matthew checking in. Matthew, what's going on?
Nothing much, Mark. I caught your top 7, and I agreed with it. Honestly, I'm surprised that you had Texas at 2. I thought you'd put us at 3 because you're right. Everyone and their mother has Texas 3, Ohio State 2. So I was kind of surprised on that. The only thing I disagree with, Texas has a better quarterback room. Both of our starter and backup would start for you guys this year. That's the only pushback I would have for you. I think Arch Manning's better than, just in the little that I've seen. Howard, he's good, but there's no upside there in my opinion. I think you've seen everything you need to see from him. He's a B- guy. That's what he is. But I have no issue with your opinion on that. But just like your +3, -3 rule, I don't know how much you've looked like the top 25 year over year. You have like 10 teams every year from the prior year that don't even finish in the top 25. And this is just straight off the bat. I wanted to see what you think of it. So +3, -3 rule. In the ACC, I'm just going to give you two teams and what you think. Virginia Tech went 6-6 last year. I believe they're going to go 9-3 this year. I'm high on them. They're going to be the number one team in the country in returning production. So that would be one of the teams in the ACC. The other team, and I can't believe I'm going to fall for this trap. I think you know where I'm going with this, Mark. I'm going to have Miami. If you do not go 9-3 with the talent you have, Mario Cristobal, please, Miami, fire the man. That team is a top 5 or 6 talented team in the country. They are. Look at the roster. It is stacked, and it's a bad schedule. You should be able to go 9-3. You should be able to go 9-3. So I'm giving them a +3. I just want to get your quick opinion on those two ACC teams, Mark.
Well, with Miami, yes, he took over a team that was a top 15 talent team, and he's upgraded it. They just brought in the number 3 or 4 class. They had the number 6 or 7 class the year before. They've picked up the best quarterback, most likely the best quarterback in the transfer portal, at least the guy with the best upside. Yeah, the schedule is not a difficult schedule. They're big non-conference games against Florida. And yeah, that's for them to lose 4 games against that schedule. I don't remember the schedule off the top of my head in regards to, of course, they've got Florida State. I don't know if they have Clemson.
I'm not 100% sure if they have Clemson, but even if they have Clemson, like, you can lose versus Clemson. You can lose that game. Like, I'm giving you 3 losses on an okay schedule. In what is this, Cristobal's 3rd year? You just
Yeah.
got a good quarterback in Cam Ward. This team should be able to go 9-3. There's serious issues if this team can't go 9-3.
I do agree with that. I just want to check there. So I just want to see if they do play Clemson. What's kind of ironic about last year's results were that they finished 7-5 in the regular season, and if anyone would have been told that they would beat Clemson and Texas A&M, and they still finished 7-5. So they don't even play Clemson.
Oh my, yeah. Your hardest game's Louisville. That's your hardest game.
Yeah. It's a horrible
Horrible
schedule.
schedule. Yeah.
Well, they've got Florida State at home. So oh man.
I
Yeah.
mean, you have to. They have to. If they're not a +3 team off of last year, I'd be shocked. He has to. He has to do it. I don't understand what excuse you can give him at this point.
They play one game against a team that has as much talent as they do?
Maybe Florida State, and that's a maybe. That's it. The only team that's close.
Yeah, we're not even expecting them to go out and requiring them to go pull off an upset or beat somebody with more talent. Just don't trip all over yourself against the likes of Virginia Tech or whomever you're going to, Georgia Tech, like they do every year.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, they should do it. And then in the Big Ten, Mark, I have, just again off the top of my head, I think Nebraska, I think they go 8-4. They were 5-7 last year. I think you add the 3 wins to that. I think they're good enough. Everything that I've seen from Matt Rule at his time at Temple and Baylor, especially being in the Big 12, I got to see him a lot. The guy is a fantastic coach. He should be able to get that team to 8 wins. They got a little bit more talent, and with his coaching, I think they get to 8. So I have them at +3. And then Michigan fans, you can hate me all you want. I have you at -3. You're not going to – you went 12-0 last year. You still win 9 games with -3. So I think that's definitely doable. So, these are 2 teams that I'm basically – I think these are the teams I'm most confident in. Like Mark says, you have to pick 5 to 6 teams every year in every conference to do +3 wins or -3. So these are the 2 teams in the Big Ten that I'm saying as a +3 and a -3 +3 for Nebraska, -3 for Michigan.
Yeah, so I would be the most confident in the Big Ten with Michigan. And actually, Washington would be my number 1 pick.
Yeah, Washington, I didn't even think of them just because the conference moving. But, yeah, they're going to be up there too. Actually, yeah, that would be number 1. That should be number 1. They're definitely not going to go at what they would go 9-3 at worst.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you're right. That'd be my probably number 1. I'll probably add them in there. But I'm confident in the Nebraska one. I really am.
Nebraska could be 6-0.
Yes.
They could be 7-0 after the bye week and going to Indiana. When they go to Ohio State in October, they should be 7-0. They'll probably trip up.
Yeah. One
and be
time.
6-1.
Yeah.
They lose to Ohio State. That's their second loss. They go to USC. They lose a 3rd game. And then they lose one of the Wisconsin-Iowa matchups, and they're still 8-4.
Yeah. So, I mean, I feel pretty good about that one as well. And then in the Big 12, I think it's pretty easy, honestly. I'm giving +3 to Baylor and +3 to Arizona State. I think they both go 6-6. They both went 3-9 last year. I like 6-6. I like Kenny Dillingham at Arizona State. And this is a do or die year for Dave Aranda. If Dave Aranda doesn't go at least 500, he's getting fired. So that's why I believe in them, because I don't think he's a bad coach. I think he's at least good enough to get that team to 6-6.
Yeah, I think that's a good call. They've got a much different schedule, of course, than they've had. That'll be interesting to see these crossover teams that are going into new conferences.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm more excited I know there are bigger games in the SEC, bigger games in the Big Ten. I think the Big 12 is going to be the most competitive league next year. I think there's like 7 to 8 teams next year that could possibly win the Big 12. I think it's going to be really fun to watch, really interesting matchups. So I'm definitely going to have my eye on that. And then the SEC, I know I'm a Texas fan, and I'm going to get hate from Oklahoma fans, but I have -3 for Oklahoma. It's the easiest one to pick in the SEC. It really is. With the schedule they have, they went 10-2 in a worse league last year, and you're starting Jackson Arnold. You're going to have a new offensive coordinator in his first year with basically an all-new offensive line to go with it. I'm taking the under 2 as well, because they're 7.5 over-under for wins. I have them at 7-5 next year, and I have -3 wins coming off the 10-2. And then a team I'm high on just because of the head coach, and this is all my trust in Hugh Freeze. I have Auburn at 9-3 as +3 coming off a 6-6 season. So those are my 2 teams in the SEC. I don't know what your feeling is on them, Mark.
Auburn 9-3. I'd have to look at the schedule. I do think that they're going to be much improved, but 3 losses in the SEC, that might be difficult to achieve. And who was the other one?
Oklahoma -3. So I'm at 7-5.
Yeah. Again, I'd have to look at the schedule. I think that's I would have to think that that's their bottom.
Their last 3 is very tough. I know we looked at it a couple weeks ago. It was Missouri, Alabama, and LSU, and 2 of them are on the road. And that's what does it for me. Like, those are 3 very hard games back to back to back, and you have 2 of them on the road. So at best, in that scenario, I have them at 1-2. So I don't think Brent Venables is a bad coach, but he's not who they had before in Lincoln Riley. And honestly, I don't think Lincoln Riley's great, but he's not Bob Stoops, honestly. That's where Oklahoma's missing. Bob Stoops has become like a quietly underrated coach. I don't know why people don't talk about him in like the pantheon of great coaches. He was a fantastic coach, and what he did at Oklahoma goes unnoticed. He gave a great roster to Lincoln Riley. Lincoln Riley did what he could with it, did pretty well. And we kind of see what Lincoln Riley's done at USC, and then what's followed up with Brent Venables. So that's why I have Oklahoma at 7-5.
Oh, I do have Oklahoma as the 19th best team in the country.
Ooh, I would have to disagree with that, but I mean, you dive deeper into that than I do, so I'll go with you on that. But I just don't see
That doesn't mean that they can't go 7-5 in the SEC and be the 19th best team in the country.
That is true as well. So, I mean, that's the thing too. They could be as good of a team as they were last year and go 7-5 just because you went from it was a bad Big 12 schedule last year to a good SEC schedule, or at least an average SEC schedule. So, I have 7-5 for them. What overall, I guess, I don't know how to ask this without offending Michigan fans, I guess, but I don't really care. Why do you think Michigan fans just think next year is just going to translate perfectly into this year when you have a different quarterback who's going to be a high draft pack, even though they know my opinion on that? I don't think he's that good. And then you have Sharon Moore, who has never really been a head coach through an offseason. He was handed a team. It kind of reminds me of Texas basketball, where Chris Beard was the head coach. Rodney Terry took it over and did a great job last year, took him to the Elite Eight, but he's not as good of a coach as Chris Beard. And I think it's pretty dumb to assume that Sharon Moore is going to be 80% of what Jim Harbaugh is as a head coach.
Yeah, I think that that they're running into a tougher schedule, of course. So they've got more challenging games. They have proven themselves, of course, in the postseason this past year, but they did have weak conference and out of conference schedules the last 2 years. And yes, Sharon Moore, for the credit that he should be given for doing what he did on those 3 Saturdays in November, he was not the coach of the team. He was not the leader of the program. He did not set the the agenda. He was not the guy. He coached on game day. And that was all handed to him in a sense by Jim Harbaugh. So yeah, he's going to have some learning on the job to do. And their quarterback position is a huge question mark in particular.
And off of that, like, Alec Orji could literally be Jalen Milroe of last year. Jalen Milroe lost 2 games as a starter, both to 2 very good teams, Michigan, obviously, and to Texas. And they have less talent around him than Alabama did. That's a fact. You can look at the rosters. They have less NFL talent this year around Alec Orji than Jalen Milroe had around him. And you have just as hard of a schedule. So I don't think it's crazy to think they lose 3 games. I don't. Michigan fans can get angry at that all you want. By the way, if you go 9-3 next year with your schedule, you're still a top, 12 team in the country, maybe top 9 or 10 team in the country. So it's like, I don't understand why you get angry at that. That'd be like next year if Texas goes 9-3. Listen, is it a disappointment? Yeah, but it's still, honestly, for a first year in the SEC, if you would have told most Texas fans and most people in the country, hey, Texas goes 9-3 first year in the SEC, people are like, you're freaking crazy. So, like, I don't understand the hate or disappointment for Michigan fans. You won a national championship. That's more than most teams can say in the last 20 years. Take it, enjoy it. If you go 9-3, it's still a successful season, especially with the new schedule. Yeah, Texas coming to town. And it gives, like, I think that's a jumping off start for Sharon Moore. I think that's a good first year.
I also don't think that they should concede that they're going to lose all these games either.
No, I agree. I just don't think it would be wise to expect 11-1 or 12-0. I think I could see 10-2. I could see that. But that's, like, to me, that's the ceiling next year for Michigan. Personally. I guess I could be wrong on that, but I don't see 11-1 with that. If they go 11-1 with that schedule, they may repeat. So that, by the way, would be insane if they did that. Michigan fans, I feel bad for you Ohio State fans. They will become even more insufferable if that did happen.
Well, I will still continue just to throw the last 20 and 50 years in their face is what I'll do. I can just rely on that.
I'm used to that with Oklahoma fans because you made the video. They've dominated us basically in the regular season. For whatever reason, we do better in postseason games and we win national championships on a more recent basis than they do. But yeah, so I understand that when it comes to the rivalry.
So, yeah, Ohio State has to lose a lot of games to Michigan for me not to have any talking points there. So that's fine.
And then my last thing, Darrell, I know you're coming in either next or after that. I'm high on Kentucky. He's going to keep hearing that. I'm high on Kentucky. I think they win 8 games next year. I really do. I like Brock Vandergriff. I like what Stoops is building. I think their schedule, I just took a look at it Wednesday. I think it's a good enough schedule. I think they can go 8-4. That wouldn't put them at +3, but it'd put them at +2. So I think they're going to be good next year.
Very good. Well, Matthew, thank you.
Yeah, no
Everybody
problem.
join Matthew every Wednesday at 7:30 Eastern.
Yeah, please do that, guys. Every Wednesday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, Bleeding Burnt Orange. I will be on the SEC channel and also the Texas channel. Join me. We'll be breaking down spring ball next week because it starts off. And we'll probably talk a little NFL draft combine stuff. Byron Murphy had himself a day today. I basically locked in a top 15 pick in the NFL draft today. He broke the record for 10-yard split at the NFL draft for a defensive tackle. Also, I believe his vertical is 33 inches, so he's an absolute freak for his size. So we'll talk about that a little bit as well.
I haven't heard this one before. Fat Albert for Sharon Moore.
I know who that is because I actually did watch the cartoon, and I actually like the cartoon. Unfortunately, that cartoon has been canceled now for particular reasons. But that's a good one.
Okay, Matthew. Thank you, man.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Was there anything really that bad? I'm not going to get into it. I guess I did hear that at the time too, but who knows? Probably some, ridiculous reason. All right. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. We got the real MVP here.
Hey, Mark, how you doing?
I am doing well. What's going on?
Well, I really respect and like Matthew Miller's analysis as a completely biased person in this equation. Can I do a little bit of time just trying to push Matthew up to 9 wins?
Well, so he gave you 8 and 4? Was that it?
Yes, I want to try to hit that +3 mark if I could.
Sure, would love to see you hit the Voice of College Football +3 standard.
So, in order for Kentucky to do that, they've got some games they have to win, and I think these are all realistic games they should win. Southern Miss, Ohio, South Carolina, Vanderbilt, Florida, Auburn, Murray State, and Louisville. Those are all games where Kentucky is probably going to be favored and should win.
Okay.
They only need to beat Tennessee, Texas, Georgia, Ole Miss, one of those 4 to get there. Now, I know those are all really good teams, Mark, but upsets happen in college football. And Kentucky has played Ole Miss very closely in recent seasons.
Yep.
So I think that is a game they could possibly get out of those 4.
Yep.
So, and there's going to be some crazy upsets we don't see now. Is Kentucky better than Ole Miss? Absolutely not. But I remember 2 years ago when Kentucky had a pretty disappointing team with Will Levis. They should have won that game, Mark.
I recall that. As soon as you brought that up, I thought, man, that was a really exciting finish. A game that I remember Kentucky having the ball on the last drive. A couple penalties went against them, and they weren't able to finish it off.
Right. So,
if I recall correctly.
Right. And then I think if they can't win that one, I think they can beat Tennessee. I don't think Tennessee's this powerhouse team. They're probably going to beat Kentucky, 60, 70% of the time?
Yeah.
So I don't like saying this because I don't believe in it, but Kentucky is due for a win in the series, Mark. I mean, we've been losing to them for so long. You would think just by the law of averages, Kentucky would get one eventually.
Well, let me ask you this. How much of a home field advantage do you think Kentucky has in football?
Oh, probably around the 40s.
In the 40s, meaning?
Nationally.
Oh, got you. Because I was just curious, how much better do you feel about having home games against quality opponents than playing on the road? Okay.
I think we've
got a reasonable advantage, but it's not Death Valley.
Right. Kentucky probably, in terms of the SEC, has one of the 5 worst home advantages in their conference. I know it's crazy, but
all right. Anything else, Daryl?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, why do you have Clemson at 10? That just seems a little bit high to me.
Why do I have Clemson at 10? Well, I got to say that after talking to our Clemson guy the other day, Jason Priester, and going through both sides of the football, I kind of thought, well, I made this out a few weeks ago, and I did think, well, maybe I put Clemson a little high. Again, I'm not matching this up against the schedule. This is just who I think are the top 25 teams in the country, and they did lose quite a bit defensively, and their quarterback, Cade Klubnik, has to get considerably better.
Well, aren't they going with the? Oh, yeah, I don't see him being the answer at all, Mark. And honestly, with some of those back half teams, I think they would probably lose to. I think they certainly lose to Penn State, for example, or Utah. I put those programs ahead of Clemson right now in teams.
I think that's a toss-up.
No, I see a continually downward trend with Dabo's philosophy. I haven't seen any real change in his attitude towards it. So I don't see why we should be inflating what they've done. And to me, 10 feels an inflation. I feel like it should be in the 15 to 20 range.
Actually, if you would have put Clemson on the field against Utah last year, I would have taken Clemson.
Yeah, maybe. Without Cam Rising for sure, but
they outplayed Florida State.
Okay, I mean,
they outplayed Florida State with Jordan Travis. They outgained them by 150 yards. They should have won the game. They didn't have a field goal kicker.
Right. Well, that's part of the game, Mark. I mean, that's Clemson's fault. They didn't have a field goal kicker.
I know. I mean, that's their fault. They were unprepared. Yes. But I'm just saying.
Yeah, we shouldn't be making excuses now, Mark. I mean, we don't want to be like that.
Just pointing out that had they, and I'm anticipating that they've addressed that issue this year.
No, I hope so. I hope so. You know, it'd be nice if they entered the portal ever and got a player, but maybe you should tell Dabo that they have the portal. Maybe send up a few smoke signals, since apparently he likes old school technology.
Yes, he's holding his ground. He is doing that.
Right. He's also losing his ground. He reminds me of a person who's just at the edge of a cliff and is doing everything possible to stay on it. And I think he's just going to slowly slip away. Like, I expect this season for him to be a 7-5 or 6-6 type season for them. I just don't. I didn't see anything from Cade Klubnik that made me believe in them.
I do agree with that. He did not impress me at all. He looks like he's overmatched. Like he is just not a top flight quarterback or shows that kind of ability.
Right. And I don't expect the defense to be nearly as good as it was last year. So anyway, that's my thoughts on Clemson. The final thing I'll ask you is, Mark, we're now going to a 14-team playoff, apparently, because 12's not enough, even though we haven't seen 12. So what are your thoughts about the momentum of a 14-team playoff?
Well, I stated this a few different times that this is coming from the Big Ten for sure, and maybe some combination of the Big Ten and the SEC. Because I don't think that they're too thrilled with sharing buys with inferior football teams. I think that annoys them. That why should we have an Ohio State, Michigan, USC, whoever we're going to put out there as the number one team from our conference that's 12-1 that went through this gauntlet, and then the SEC is going to have Georgia, Alabama, whomever it's going to be in that particular year, 12-1 as the SEC champion, and you're going to have 10-3 Arizona or 10-3 Utah against an inferior schedule, and you're going to be seeded higher and have a bye, not only against our champion, but against our second and third place teams that are better teams. So I saw that coming, and I said it. I think that's a big initiative there. And then we're also seeing talk about there being automatic qualifiers from all these conferences, and the Big Ten and the SEC being given more than the other conferences, which I think is completely unjustified and just flat out wrong. But that is going to allow, again, the tip-off was when Tony Petiti said, we want to play better games in November. Well, better games are the better teams playing each other and giving each other more losses. But if you've got automatic qualifying, not just for the champion, but down the list, then you've taken care of that. I don't like it.
It's an interesting balance between the buys and the power conferences, because I do agree with you. It's unjust that just because the SEC and Big Ten are better, or we think they're better, we don't know that for sure until they play the games, they should get more spots. But practically speaking, I think it's good for the necessary health of the sport. I think it's a good thing, because I saw a report from Ross Dellinger yesterday that said the ACC and Big 12 can get 2 buys. So imagine the second best ACC and Big 12 team getting a bye. That was going to basically ruin the playoff.
Wait, give me the scenario in which this would happen in a 14-team playoff?
Yeah, every conference gets 2 buys.
No, every conference gets 2 automatic qualifiers.
Okay, they get 2 auto qualifiers. Sorry, not buys, auto qualifiers.
Yeah.
Which, in my opinion, ruins the playoff, because the second Big 12 and ACC team don't deserve it. They're not good enough.
Well, I agree with you. There shouldn't be any automatic qualifiers outside of conference champions.
Right. I mean, I think this is going in a negative direction fast, because you're having 9 of the 14 spots be auto qualifiers, if you include the group of 5 champs. So you're going to have 3 of the teams in the playoff be basically a cupcake.
Well, I'm guessing that was a bargaining situation back and forth between the Big Ten and the SEC versus the ACC and the Big 12, that when the big conferences said, we're going to demand 3 automatic qualifiers, that the ACC and the Big 12 probably countered with, well, you've got to give us an extra qualifier too. We can't just have our champion in the league. And then, look at my rankings, look at the final rankings from the AP last year, look at the indication going forward. The top 10 teams in the country are going to be Big 10 and SEC teams. And I'm guessing that the ACC and the Big 12 countered with, you got to give us another automatic spot.
I understand that from the practicality of it and from the justice side of it, but just from the entertainment side and the fan side, I mean, I feel like it's going to be pretty brutal to watch some of these playoff games of the second best ACC and Big 12 team are in there. I mean, they don't belong. The first team don't even belong. So we're going to have what? Seriously, they don't.
Maybe.
We can say most years they're not one of the 12 best teams, Mark.
Louisville would have been in the playoff this past
Would they
year.
have been?
Well, with his second qualifying spot for the ACC.
Yes, they would have, but in terms of power rankings, I don't think they would have been in there.
No. I'm talking about with this second qualifying position. And I know it's a different conference now, but Oklahoma State at 9-4 would have gotten a second position, I guess. It would have been them.
Right. And don't you think for the playoff, that's going to really hurt the prestige of it? I mean, you're going to have these games, no offense, going to be 60, 70 point blowouts, Mark.
Well,
I'm not. You think I'm joking? We saw what Florida State did happen when they ran into Georgia. Georgia played Louisville. Georgia could do whatever they wanted against that Louisville team. It's just a different level of sport, Mark. We saw USC's backups beat Louisville.
You are to the nth degree on that. I agree with your theory on that. I have stated the same thing. I'm in agreement, but not to the extent that you are about. I know that TCU and Georgia happened, and we watched it. So we saw what can happen when the best team in the country plays the 9th best team in the country, or whatever they were.
Yeah, but Louisville's not even that.
No.
Louisville's not the 9th best team in the country. Oklahoma State's not the 9th best team in the country. This is more like the best team in the country or the second best team going against the 18th best team in the country, Mark.
Yeah.
And that's my concern.
Well, again, I don't know why the automatic qualifiers. I don't know what the Big Ten and the SEC are so afraid of. They're going to get those spots anyway.
Yeah,
How
and
are
if
they
anything, they're
not
going to
go-
get more spots.
How are they not going to get 3 spots?
I mean, Mark, I know people think I might be trolling with this. I could see the SEC getting 6 spots this year.
All right, DeReal, I got you.
Yeah,
We
I
need to
just
keep
I just
moving.
don't understand this all. But anyway, Mark, thanks for having me on. Good talking to you.
All right. I just realized the time, but we got to honor these calls. So we will do exactly that. By the way, in 2002, Fat Albert was placed as the number 12 all-time cartoon in the TV Guide's list of 50 greatest cartoon characters of all time. Somebody tell me what's wrong with this. Joe, what's going on tonight?
Hey, Mark.
How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good. I sent you an email because I want you to hear something I think you'd be interested in. I think it would help you in trying to make sense of what's going on between college football and everything, conference combinations and NIL. Anyway, I get downloaded a show, and I don't want to say it on here because I don't want to give it any credibility because I don't think it's any good other than what they had today. When they do interviews, these guys I'm talking about,
Yeah,
they're really good. And so when they sit there and talk about Notre Dame and evaluate players, they're terrible. So I don't want to give their name, but they interviewed Jack Swarbrick. He's on his way out. I think he leaves in June.
Yep.
And I think it's just really a really good take on not only Notre Dame's perspective, but what he sees about this whole thing. So I want to be able to send you that, and I don't know how to do it because I get it downloaded to my phone, and my phone isn't connected to my email. I sent you an email, but I don't want to say it so much.
Isn't there a link? Was this on YouTube?
No, it gets downloaded into my phone, and my phone isn't connected. Because in order to connect my phone to my email, Apple wants to know my autobiography. They want to know everything about me, and I just don't want to do it. And Google does too, so I don't. They already know too much. But anyway, so I'd like you to. I want you to hear it because I think you'd really appreciate the perspective that he gives to the state of the state. Because it makes a lot of sense, and he gives his true feelings about the way these combinations are happening. He's not thrilled with it. He really feels bad for Stanford and Cal. He thinks they were really left out in the dust, and he's talking about it from an educational and institutional position as well.
Yeah. Well, I can go search that and try to find it.
Well, if you answer my email, I'll send you the persons to look up, but I don't want to say it on the air.
All right, we'll do that. Anything else going on, Joe?
No, I find it funny that everybody loves to rag on Notre Dame. It's no different, but boy, with social media, you really see them coming out and being taking pot shots at anything and everything that Notre Dame does. And then in the next sentence, they'll say that Notre Dame's not relevant for 30 years. But yet, if that's the case, why is the talk always about them?
That's a great point. Nobody's talking about, Western Kentucky. Nobody's talking about Duke football because it's not relevant. So don't talk about Notre Dame if they're not relevant. Yes.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I see some of the people in your chat. I don't come here as much as I used to because I think it's totally a Midwestern, group, and they know what they know, and they're not open to anything else. So
yes, well, that's unfortunate because that's not what our intent is. So
I agree with that. I know that
do things to change that. I don't know how to change that, but that's the issue I run into all the time when I create content because I'm trying to create it for my viewership, but I'm also trying to bring in new viewers. But but I'm not
Well,
going
I think
to
you're
create
doing
videos.
it pretty good. I think you're doing a pretty good job of it by going into like regional podcasts instead of just having one big mayhem. So, when you get enough good people to be able to host these shows, I think you'll still be doing good.
All right. I sure hope so. That's our aim.
All right, brother.
All right, Joe. Appreciate you being here.
All right. Appreciate you.
Have a good night.
Email me, will you?
Will do. Just did.
You'll like it.
All right. Thanks, Joe.
All right.
I did not want to cut Joe off, but I already had the clicker. When you're about to click something off, it reminds me of a time at ESPN when I was sending an email. I was sending an email to somebody at ESPN that included a lot of names of people that I did not want to be on this email, but it was one of those deals where I wrote the email, then certain names populated in the sent category, and I was like, no, don't send that, and I had my hand on the mouse, and I ended up like practically ripping this mouse out of the wall to go back around behind the computer and shut off the computer. Anyway, all right, you folks obviously have something better to do, so we will close it down here, but we appreciate you stopping by for an impromptu live stream tonight. We will get a schedule out to all of you in terms of when you can count on us being live. We're working on that. So thanks for stopping by, and catch the portion that you missed if, like many that commented, came in just for the top 5, top 10, whatever. So we've got a top 25. It's a spring edition. So check it out. And we will see you live for the Big Ten Live show. That's at 7 Eastern coming up on Friday night. Again, Big Ten Live, 7 Eastern, Friday night, right here. We'll take your calls. See you then.